So one of the more interesting things happening in Europe, policy-wise lately, was the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative. And I hope you all know that this talk is about it. Daniel Domscheit-Berg about exactly that topic. Thank you.
Hi. Before I begin talking about, as has been announced, the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, I'd at least like to make a short disclaimer to put the whole thing into a bit of a context. I'm on the stage today because actually the people that would have held that talk did not arrive here. So Birgitta Jonsdottir, a parliamentarian from Iceland, was actually supposed to hold this talk. She, for a couple of reasons, could not come. Then Smari McCarthy, someone else who is very actively working in Iceland on this initiative, could not come either. So now I'm in a position that, as I had been involved in the past, I'm talking to you about this subject. On the other hand, I can't really go on the stage and just talk about the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative without maybe at least tackling a couple of other topics that some people are asking me about all the time. So it's very important for me to make clear that these are different subjects, but they have some common grounds, and maybe that is how I can justify talking about both of them and hopefully being able to put them in a bit of a context. So I've struggled very hard to compile what actually it is that I would want to talk about, because I feel this year, as Rob has been highlighting in the keynote too, it's a very important year. Lots of things are happening at the moment, and it's not entirely clear where we are all heading, as Rob had this very nice analogy with a bus that we're all sitting in. But on the other hand, I feel that we should try to define a bit more of that bus. So I have been involved in IMMI quite right at the beginning. We were in Iceland talking about the possibilities to do that. And when about 1 year ago to the day, I entered this stage under a pseudonym, Daniel Schmidt, that I was working under, I was basically as proud as a man can be, I guess. At least that's how it felt. I was in company of a man that I thought was a true companion, that was together with me working on shared ideals that we both had, and that I had joined for what we both thought would be an important pursuit. And if you look at recent events, I guess that that's what it has become. It has become a very important pursuit of an ideal. We both were in this pursuit already knee-deep for quite a while, and we had gotten pretty optimistic about how things were developing. In fact, the outcome of all of that pursuit of trying to ensure some of the freedoms that we all have in society and maybe enhancing these freedoms had never looked as promising as in the last year when we were here. If you listen to Rob's keynote again, and maybe even his talk on We Lost the War a few years ago, it felt a bit like we had gotten a bit ahead of the curve. So I felt that I almost wanted to say that Rob was wrong, and Rob and Frank actually talking about it, and that we got ahead of the curve and we were finally getting on top of things again, because it was all looking so promising. So at the last 26 C3, we had just come from Iceland, where we had met other people that shared the same ideals as we did, and we had proposed an avenue that only few fiction authors had so far dared to dream about. Neil Stephenson had described it in the Cryptonomicon, for example. A world that had a place that would value the free flow of information just as it's valuing its other currencies that it has. A world that understood about the value of that currency, of that information for all of our future, and that would decide to protect these values just as aggressively as it is protecting other assets. When we told you about all of that last year at the Congress here, and some of those that might have been here might remember it, it was congratulated with a tremendous applause. And I think, at least within the Congresses that I have witnessed this, it was one of the best applauses that there had been, and it just felt that what we were doing was worthwhile and we were heading somewhere that everyone could perceive as a common goal. So all of that made us very, very optimistic when we started into the new year. In the months after the Congress, we helped to make this project in Iceland a reality. We worked on it for the better of 1 month, sort of non-stop, and with the help of many others, from Birgitta Jonstad here in the parliament to Rob Gongreb here, Frank Rieger or Jacob Appelbaum, and a lot of other people that you probably will never hear about anyways. All these people have put in a lot of work into that project, and they set something in motion. If Smari or Birgitta were here today, they would have told you that IMMI has in the last few months matured pretty well. It is actually establishing itself. It is spread over different ministries that are working on different angles of it. Different political parties, cross-party support is, it has received, and it's actually also looking very good. So just to recap pretty shortly, what is actually IMMI? IMMI is supposed to be, or is developing a legal and regulatory framework that aims at establishing a soundly defined legal framework for publishers on the internet. So in that context, part of it is to create a global safe haven for investigative journalism and for critical information. The first country that has a set of regulation fit for our future societies. IMMI was worked on heavily in the first half of 2010, and on the 16th of June, it unanimously passed through its first parliamentary vote. The IMMI proposal instructed the government by that vote, among a few other things, that a legal framework for media and free speech protections should be worked out, that it should be researched, that other laws from other countries should be looked into and taken into account, and that Iceland in general should receive a general review of its information and infrastructure security, and other similar activities around that. So all of this aiming at creating a first end-to-end framework on a legal ground for the internet and information and the means of communication for us. The Ministry of Education is working on that proposal since then, and the Ministry of Education has a duty to inform Parliament about the progress every 3 months. Despite that such a notice has yet to happen, there still is good progress. A new media law, which had been in creation back when we were in Iceland, has been modified to contain better protections for journalist sources and is already the first law that is hopefully going to be implemented soon, that is containing part of what IMMI will be. So that bill particularly will be hopefully tabled in January or February. So it is quite about 1 year after things started to happen, the first actual regulations will come on the table. Most of the other work is research, as I mentioned before. So one of the things that we all learned the hard way during that year is that if you want to do something correctly, it tends to require some time. So while setting IMMI into motion was quite easy, as at least it felt, because it's a small country and we could easily reach a lot of politicians and people that had an interest in advancing this, from businesses to telco providers, regulatory authorities. All the people that we talked to in Iceland, they understood why this would make sense and why it would give them some stability and would give them a good perspective for the future. So all of that was set in motion pretty easily, but I guess then it's when that is when it's happening. That's when it's meeting with regulations we have or processes within parliaments, and when it just starts to take some time. So whatever you do, it will require some time, even if it's such a small place as Iceland. IMMI has also spawned a couple of follow-up initiatives, that's something I'd like to mention as well, in other countries, like Italy, Spain, and Slovenia. So all of these countries are looking into seeing how much they can adapt parts of the IMMI proposal for their countries. And that's actually really Italy. So I was a bit astonished to hear that. They still have some way to go, I guess, in respect to press freedoms, but at least it seems like some people are beginning. And that, I guess, is a good sign. So there are a lot of things that are happening that I think should make us confident in the fact that something has been set forth. But what does all of that mean? So first of all, I think these are good news, and we can see that something has been set in motion, and it is inspiring some kind of reform. On the other hand, personally, I think that just the last few months have shown all of us why something like this, and a bold approach like IMMI might present, has become ever important. If we look at recent events, and mainly these events are caused by the latest world record publications made by WikiLeaks, in form of the diplomatic cables recently, we can see pretty plainly how fragile the fundament of free communication for all of our future is. So we should understand why an initiative, even if it's small and it's just tangling Iceland, why has become ever important in ensuring our freedoms and showing that there's an alternative path we can go. And I'd like to make perfectly clear what the freedom of communication is that I'm trying to get at here. So abstractly, I guess, our society is right now transforming into its next evolutionary stage. So we are approaching the age of a globalized society that we've all been told about for decades. A world where all the decisions that we take day to day have to be seen in a global context, where whether those are plain consumer decisions that we take, or it being decisions on the freedom of the tools to communicate that we have. And especially the freedoms to use these tools, who can use it, and the frameworks we define for that usage and for these tools. So the tool of communication in the future that we have is the internet. There's no doubt about this, and I guess I don't have to really explain that to anyone here anyways, but maybe we need to be more aware of this issue. So that wonderful interconnecting technology that we have has brought us all very closely together, close to one another. It is the fundamental tool underlying all of our communication needs in the present and especially in the future. So the internet will be as crucial to all our future liberties, our possibilities to talk to each other, as has been the printing of books for the enlightenment of humankind. And it is a tool of the future, but it is stuck in the present. And that's what we have to understand. As a tool, the internet enables our communication capabilities to be scaled to future needs. But its use, and that is also nothing new, leads to an immense challenge of structures of our society, of powers that exist, and it leads to the need for a redefinition of these terms on which we communicate, on which we interact, and all of these things. And the existing structures fight back, and that's what we can perceive in various forms over the last few years or even months. So in the last years, there have been numerous advances in this field. Censorship lists, Hadopi, data retention, or just outrageous ideas like creating opening hours for the German internets. We've all been challenged, and I mean really challenged, with ideas that sound so barely real, and that at some point in time even sound so ridiculous that you can hardly take them seriously. But all of these efforts, nevertheless, they aim at something very common, and that is the aim of restricting the reformatory power of the tools that we have in these days to define our future. So countering those advances alone kept a lot of organizations busy in the last years. So you can look at the CCC or the folks from the Föbud or AK Zensur, La Quadrature in France, or the EDRI on the European level. There are plenty of organizations that are all maxed out by taking care of defending some of our rights. And if there's any lesson we can learn from that, and that is an important lesson I learned when observing all of this, is that what we need is not one organization or one leader or whatever that is traveling into one direction. But what we actually need is a strong, diverse, and decentralized community of different organizations, of capable individuals that act up in the community, and unified in the acting on a free future's behalf.